Our This Week in XR podcast is sponsored by our friends at Zapper, the world's leading augmented reality platform and creative studio, with over 11 years of experience working with the world's biggest brands through Zapper Creative Studio. Zapper also has an award-winning web AR platform, ZapWorks, that lets you create your own mobile AR magic. Finally, check out their Zap Box, the most affordable mixed reality headset on the planet. Start creating AR over at zap.works or talk to them about your next AR project at zapper.com. Good morning, everybody. It's Friday, March 3rd, 2023. I'm Charlie Fink with This Week in XR with my colleagues Roni Abovitz and Ted Shilowitz. Good morning, gentlemen.
Good morning.
It's March 3rd. It is an auspicious day in the history of the Fink family because my second granddaughter, Juno, is born today.
Oh, congratulations.
How about that?
Happy birthday.
Very exciting.
Yeah, happy birthday, Juno. Happy 0 birthday.
Awesome.
So it makes the world of tech seem small for just a brief moment. So we've got a great guest today related to speaking of something that is not small, Qualcomm. Hugo Swart, it's a VP and GM of their XR business, is going to be coming to us live from Barcelona, Spain, to tell us about Mobile World Congress. It didn't seem like there was a whole hell of a lot in the way of big stories out of Mobile World Congress. I guess Qualcomm has a big deal that they came out with this morning about their Snapdragon Spaces alliance with some of the big telcos. And then there's this other company, Xiaomi, is that Xiaomi? How do you pronounce it?
Xiaomi.
Xiaomi showed off an AR headset that got a lot of attention, was picked up, but not a whole lot of information beyond a few tech specs in terms of when it would be released or what the apps would actually be. So anyway, we'll get an earful about MWC from Hugo. Definitely jealous of everybody who enjoyed a little boondoggle over to Barcelona for MWC. Yeah, then we got some straight up news.
Sounds good. Yeah, and Qualcomm is certainly friend of the show, friend of XR. They effectively, other than the world of Magic Leap, which of course Roni knows well, and potentially the world of Apple, they own the chipset that effectively every major manufacturer that runs in VR and XR and MR these days uses, and they keep advancing that. And their announcement, while not splashy, is substantial because they're working with so many of these OEM partners and vendors to build the world of XR devices that sooner or later someone's going to crack the code and build the one that everybody wants, right? And it's going to be more than likely on a Qualcomm chipset. It'll be interesting to talk to you.
They've done an amazing job executing this strategy, and we've gotten a pretty good look at it. They would not really have been on my radar other than the fact that they sponsor AWE every year. The first year I went in 2016, they were like the main sponsor, and so it's like, what's a big chip company doing here? So I've learned a lot from watching them, and one of the things that they've talked about a lot. We were talking about this in relation to this company, Mawari, a few weeks ago, is that we always thought, 5G headsets will work much better with 5G. And of course, in theory, they should.
In theory, yes.
But it turns out that because the content is two-way, right, and because of the latency issue is actually aggravated. So 5G has actually not solved anything. It's just shown us how bad a position we really are in. And Qualcomm has come up with engineered a solution they call dual compute. Right. And it is a big piece of infrastructure that has to be put in place, not just software, but also hardware, both on the carrier side and also in the handsets. So it's like an insanely ambitious, huge thing to take on. Right. Yeah. And they took this thing on, I'm going to say about 4 or 5 years ago. They started talking about dual compute and their concern about 5G being inadequate to deal with the issues. I mean, great to download a movie, not so good if you're downloading a movie back and forth. So, there was a trap there in 5G that they have actually engineered an incredibly complicated solution, because, as I said, it's not just atoms we're talking about here, but not just bits we're talking about here, but we're also talking about atoms and, changing the infrastructure, both in the physical world and in terms of the cellular system and the phone. I mean, it's just an incredibly huge undertaking, and they've actually done a pretty amazing job, it seems, executing it.
Yeah, it's one thing to solve one-way latency. It's a whole nother animal to solve bidirectional latency. And it's a major engineering undertaking. And the fact that it's working at all is kind of a miracle. So
yeah, so we'll get into that with Hugo. Here's an interesting story that came up from a company in Israel called Hexa 3D, which has a system for taking 2D photos like you would see in e-commerce, like on a Walmart or Amazon. You have that one photo and all those little chiclets next to it. So that's going away. And instead, you're going to get a 3D asset, and you're just going to mouse over it. And it's going to, and you can look at it from any angle, zoom in, zoom out, all that. And Hexa delivers that. And they have a management system for it. And you, as the vendor, don't have to do anything. They're just going to construct the asset from the pictures that you have there now.
Yeah, I would say this is starting to emerge into like a sector now, right? This idea of using your phone and sort of low-cost devices and consumer-level devices to start to build 3D assets and then utilize them. There's another company I was looking at. I'm curious if you and Roni know them, called Luma AI. I was just looking at that, and they're kind of doing stuff in similar space. It's an interesting thing that, like, this isn't an outlier now. There's a number of companies that are doing this and finding use cases for this. So we're moving from 2D as a mainstream image plane to potentially 3D as a mainstream image plane and image usage, because it's not as exotic anymore.
And Charlie and Ted, full disclosure, because I know way too much about this. I've been assisting an Israeli startup who's a competitor to Hexa called 3D-Fi. And so Ted is right about this as an emerging sector. And what's really interesting is like all the nuances of like this progression. I'm going to use the M word for a second. The progression from the 2D flat internet to the spatial internet, or God forbid us saying it, the metaverse, because I know Meta's not allowed to use the word metaverse anymore. But the spatial internet, which is going to require 3D objects. So you think about all these interesting startups who are building these like AI appliance machines to just automate the conversion of what might be billions of photos and other things into useful high fidelity 3D objects to populate the metaverse. And what's really impressive, because I've been tracking Hexa and obviously the company I'm helping and others, just the immense capability I'm seeing in just the last 12-18 months on what used to take a 3D modeler, maybe a week or hours. This is happening in seconds.
Yeah.
And you could just see where it's going. And this is like one of the necessary conditions for spatial internet to happen, right? Like, Ted, you always talk about like, where are we in the timeline? And I think these companies are necessary for this middle period, right? You can't get to that end game unless you have all these new tools and we stumble forward and figure out. So what's interesting is these kind of tool providers, my sense is they all get rolled up one day by like an Amazon or something like that. So it just becomes a natural part, or an Apple, like a natural part of how you make things. Like, oh, I just took a photo and now it's a super high fidelity 3D object that's articulated and smart. And if you're 10 years old today, by the time you're in college, that's just going to be a total expectation out of whatever device you have. But it's really interesting that these companies are emerging right now. Super cool.
Yeah, I'd be curious when you guys take a peek at this Luma. It's called Luma Labs. They're another one in the sector that seems to be doing really interesting stuff with using iPhone cameras. And by the way, Roni, on the M word, I have discovered a new little nugget that seems to be working for me. I refuse to now call it the metaverse. I've just shortened it to MV. Kind of like, when Kentucky Fried Chicken shortened to KFC and Federal Express went to FedEx. Now I just say, yeah, in the MV, it's this. Somehow that's working better for me and other people. It's just, it's a little more encapsulated.
Can
It's
we
less
talk
about
about that
the
for a
word.
second? Like the silliness of like all the stuff that makes the MV or Mverse or Metaverse.
Yeah, it's already
people are
working
still
for you.
working on. They just feel by not saying the word, Wall Street analysts will leave them alone.
Yes.
It's just ridiculous, right?
Yes.
Like people are not. Well, maybe they are that perceptually not smart, but like, I mean, everyone's still working on it. They're just
Of
calling it
course.
something else.
Right. So I think we should start this as a This Week in XR trend, Charlie. It's now called the MV.
The MV.
It's kind of like the DMZ, the MV.
So here's an interesting story that came up this week. We were texting about it earlier this week. The roadmap that The Verge leaked.
Yeah.
Meta's
Big.
hardware roadmap.
Yeah. It's a lot of time packed there.
You want to go at it? Should we go at it?
Well, first of all, I don't know how Alex Heath is like an employee. I mean, he's just like gets this stuff straight.
Yeah, I'm so curious. I mean, because you're a member of the legit press, Charlie. How does he get so inside all this stuff? How does he know?
He's got somebody at Meta.
Called a disgruntled employee.
Got a source.
Yeah.
Starbucks. I mean, there's like 3,000 people in this group that he's following. So, right. I mean, three can keep a secret if two are dead.
Yeah, he definitely seems to get the inside dope on this stuff. It's pretty impressive.
So, by the way, if it's true, right? Like I was on the other side of let's say people like that leaking things that were anywhere from 0% true to maybe 30%. So we can't assume because someone says I have this inside track that it actually is true. Right. They're just saying it is. And they said we have a reliable source. That could be an employee who was fired 6 months ago, who was like angry. And, like those sources sometimes are really, really not good. And, the information quality could be anywhere. So, I mean, how many times has Apple not launched because some reporter is saying they're launched and Apple has not said anything. So all of it is just made up nonsense noise. Legit journalists like Charlie never do that. But others tend to peddle in some of that. So I don't know. You got to take it all with a grain of salt. What came out in the Verge?
Well, I think the one thing that is legit is the Quest 3, right? The trajectory to the Quest 3 is a big deal. And I mean, I might get in a good amount of hot water for saying this, but I believe the Quest 2 is a full-on hit. I believe the Quest Pro is a dud, and I believe the Quest 3 will be a full-on hit. They have learned a hard lesson from the Quest Pro, and they're going back to the well, and they're going to do the right things for the next one. That's what I think.
Can I agree and disagree with you slightly?
Yeah.
I agree. The Quest 2 is a hit. I think 20 million, and people disregard those numbers, but those are important numbers in VR. Yeah. And the price point for lower end consumer VR, I think was really well defined there. The Quest Pro is part of what I call Gemini. And if you have the perspective of someone like Mark or someone who is running a program, you have to put those up in the air and you have to learn. And it may be a dud to the market, but it's not a dud to their program.
That is
they
true.
Clearly learned a lot. And there's no way to learn by not putting things out there. Like if you just do it in the lab or just beta test with 50 people, it's not the same thing. So my sense is they're going to do 3 or 4 more what we would call a dud, highly important learning experiences for the overall program, super important in the end game. And if they continue to do that fearlessly, they will win.
I 100% agree.
Despite all the negative feedback they get. So I feel like it's not a market win, but it is a program win, if that makes sense.
No, I totally agree with you. And in fact, I lived that life, maybe, which I'm more sensitive to it. Because we had a number of hits with the Red cameras, various iterations, and we definitely had a number of duds. And, we learned from the thing about a dud is if you don't learn from it, it's a critical error.
Then
if
it's
you
a dud.
Learn from it, it's an extraordinarily beneficial, to your point about, how do you build a rocket program? Sometimes they blow up, sometimes they don't work. But as long as you learn from that and you keep progressing the art form and the science forward, it's an important step. You're absolutely
right. Here's a Charlie question. Charlie, how do companies, I don't think I did a great job at this. I don't think Meta's doing a great job. Apple's just not saying anything. How do companies communicate the fact that these are very long, iterative programs and you're going to put out a lot of stuff and you have to learn by putting it out there, and not all of them will be market hits? but all of them, if you're a good team, will be learning moments. Like that message.
Well, of
never
course, that's
comes
the
out.
story everyone wants to tell, right? That's
Yeah.
the story everyone wants to tell about mistakes, is that, yeah, it was a mistake, but we were practicing. So we weren't positive that, you know, this was an important thing for us to fail at so that we could do the next thing. So, I mean, it's a good story and people try and tell that, and sometimes it's true. You know, I mean, I'm a very credulous writer. I don't doubt the sincerity of the people who are trying to do these things. You know, once upon a time, I wasn't watching the other kids play. I was actually playing myself. And, you know, we were doing everything we could, but you're doing something that no one has ever done before. So, I mean, how do you know if you're doing the right thing or not? There's no history to learn from.
Yeah.
So that's always the problem with technology, and you're out on the edge, and there's just not a lot of history to pull from. I think, you know, also, you know, what's happened in the past 50 years is kind of unprecedented, you know, in the history of man. So I think, you know, it's, you know, progress is inevitable, and, you know, we'll tell ourselves whatever we need to tell ourselves to keep pushing.
Well, Roni and I certainly have the battle scars to show from that philosophy, and we're still here. We're still here fighting. So, you know,
Charlie, one thing in that article, though, which I believe is true, because I've heard the folks say it directly to me, is that, you know, the long-term bullishness of Mark of the future capability of AR specifically, right? Which I obviously, you guys know what camp I'm in, but like, I think he's not relenting on that bullishness because it's actually highly irrational to be backing off. If you run a major computer company or in computing and you disregard AR, it's at like a very radically stupid risk to your company, because it is the likely successor of mobile, in the sense that mobile phones don't go away, they evolve into something else, right? And I want to relate this back to what you said about Xiaomi. Xiaomi demonstrated not the world's best headset or the greatest phone. They demonstrated that they have solved some of the communication issues wirelessly. The rumors are that it's a blend of Wi-Fi and Bluetooth. And what's going to happen is Qualcomm's, Apple's, others with huge budgets are going to take that middle Xiaomi solution, which is blending the two streams, into something else, which is the stream XR really needs. That's going to be kind of awesome. I think someone like Mark is probably predicting that's probably going to happen around 27. And if you think about form factor, you could probably take like an ML2 through 2 more iterations. Now imagine what that looks like now, wirelessly connected to something the size of an iPhone in your pocket. So 4 years from now, that's why I think that 27 is actually not crazy. So imagine, you know, you guys have worn an ML2, take that idea, 2 more clicks of refinement and field of view and, you know, all kinds of amazing things. Now reduce its weight, get rid of the wire, use some kind of like next gen of what Xiaomi was demonstrating right now. And you could totally see that may become a breakthrough period of time for AR, because now I'm getting like Oakley level, and I've got wireless that's at the right bandwidth, and it could sit in my pocket with a little puck, right? It's not going to be everything on your head. So like the kind of design issues that need to get solved feel like they're moving in that direction. So I think what Xiaomi signaled was actually quite important, that we really are at a very important inflection point of this communication back and forth. So I think it was actually a big deal.
Yeah, and Charlie, if you go back in time, think about whatever Oculus Connect it was, probably now 5, 6, maybe even 7 years ago, when Mark was on stage showing, you know, on a big slide, this is where I'm headed. And it was glasses, like full on glasses. He's like, this is the North Star, and it's going to take a long time. And, you know, 6, 7 years later, they're on the path, right? So it's very interesting. Yeah.
Well, Charlie, here's the funny thing. Everybody knows this is the Mount of Everest, right? But the interesting thing is there's no surprise at the end game. The only surprise is what's the road up the mountain and how fast, and do you get eaten by Yetis or avalanches on the way there?
Right.
But the interesting is everyone knows what the end state looks like. It's not, that's what's cool about the space. It's not a mystery. We know the top of Everest. You're just racing to get there.
Do you think the same thing happened with the awareness of the form factor of what we just now commonly call the laptop, right? The form factor of the laptop. Remember the first Toshiba laptops that were like this thick and weighed, you know, and remember the first Apple portable, right? Which was like 22 pounds, and it was like a portable computer. But somehow in our mind's eye, we all saw this paper thin, little sort of notebooky thing. And that's ultimately what became the form factor and still
Yeah.
holds to this day to the form
And
factor.
everyone's doing it, right? Like
Right.
every single manufacturer makes the same form factor, but Apple's got aluminum and this one's got black. And I mean,
Yeah.
so, but it's all like they all got
All
there.
the
So I
same.
feel like we will all get to Everest sometime between 2027 and early 2030s. And by the way, that's what a lot of folks are not getting about this market. They think like, oh yeah, let's move past XR and metaverse. Like, wait a second. You're actually now in the mode where the biggest problems are being solved. It would be a huge mistake to take your eye off the ball.
Right.
Well, I think that's all the news we've got. And I see we've got Hugo in the green room. So let us move on to our guest.
Hey guys.
There you
Hey,
go.
it looks
How's
a
it
little
going?
funky.
Oh, you got a little max headroom going on there.
Yeah.
Matrix glitch.
Yeah, I like it.
That's kind of cool.
Yeah, it's not a bad thing. Max
Ooh, I
headroom
like
is
it. Are you
never a
getting this,
bad thing.
Charlie? This is good
Yeah,
stuff.
no, I see it. We're recording it.
Wow.
It's the solar flares.
Stuff.
It's the trouble with international communications.
That's right. Imagining holographic telepresence later. How is it going to be?
You would think from the world of Mobile World Congress they would actually have the mobile world working, but apparently not.
That's right.
So
Hey, just let me try to drop and come in again.
all right.
That was,
actually good. That's good
I
comedy.
like that. No, you got to keep some
Gotta
of
keep
that.
that at the
Oh
show.
yeah. Oh yeah.
Like I would work for
Definitely.
hours to create that effect. Like, I
Yes,
love
exactly.
that.
Exactly.
You can now call that the Hugo effect, right? Make that a little thing on like Twitch or something.
Yes. You make a meme out of it. Yeah.
It's glitch core.
Yeah. Yeah.
This is like the Seinfeld podcast portion right now.
Exactly.
Have you guys, speaking of the Seinfeld world, have you watched the AI version of Seinfeld, the low poly Seinfeld experience?
Yeah, it's
No, I haven't seen it.
oh my God, Charlie.
Charlie, it's newsworthy. There
You
are
got to
moments,
send me a link.
there are moments where it's really worthwhile.
Let's get them on the
send me a
show.
link.
Let's get them on the
All
show.
right.
We'll get back to that in a minute.
Right. Here he is, Hugo
Okay.
Swart from across the globe, looking very, very handsome. Thanks for joining us. Hugo is the, as I said earlier, the VP and General Manager of XR for Qualcomm, which is arguably, or probably definitely, the most important company in the XR ecosystem because of the incredible infrastructure that it has provided so many hardware and now software companies to create experiences both for entertainment and for enterprise. Welcome. Thanks for making time for us.
Hi guys. Thanks for inviting me. We had an incredible week here in Barcelona, following actually an incredible few months of advancement in XR, and happy to be chatting with you guys.
So you and Qualcomm are still bullish on the whole prospect of the future, huh?
We always are. That's our history. But whether there is hype or not, we make big bets.
Yeah.
And we all see what's happening with the metaverse discussion around the hype that finally I think it's slowing down. It's natural. It was expected, but we continue to invest in XR, in spatial compute, and enable the future.
I see that you're kind of frozen there, but we're hearing you fine. So let's just keep rolling. But obviously one of the things that's pushing metaverse and Meta Schadenfreude and Apple froth out of the news is that AI is breaking, as Roni pointed out in an earlier discussion. It's not unexpected to people who know what it is, but so many people don't know what it is that just to have it revealed in the whole cloth, I don't know if he's hearing me, is kind of shocking, but it's going to have a big impact on XR. I know you've kind of been anticipating this.
Yeah. I mean, if you combine, advancements in spatial compute, advancements in 5G, advancements in AI, that's the perfect marriage, right? When you put these three things together, amazing things come to life. I think you and I spoke back in AWE 2019, Charlie, and I remember you pinged me after the keynote where we're talking about exactly these things. It's the is the split processing. You know, you can't do everything on your head, right? You can't, I mean, some of these immersive experiences that we target, I mean, they require, say, you know, more than 100 watts. Well, you're not going to have 100 watts in your head. You know, maybe you can accommodate 1 watt in your head, and then you need split compute. And how do you have split compute? Well, you need extremely low latency. And, you know, it's really all these 3 things coming together. And AI, of course, critical for many things, right? Critical for some of the core kind of perception algorithms that you need for spatial compute, like head tracking, hand tracking, eye tracking, kind of the user understanding, the world understanding, but also as you know, now talk about generative AI on how you create these worlds, right? With less of a human creation or helping the human creation with the generative AI. So these 3 together, super powerful. And of course, 3 areas that we at Qualcomm are investing quite a bit.
And you guys, oh, go ahead, Charlie.
No, I was going to say, so you just announced a slew of partnerships with the telcos.
I mean, to the point, you know, where why are the telcos interested in XR, right? I think that there are a few benefits, a few things that they're looking for. Of course, they have made investments in 5G infrastructure. They want to see that 5G network enabling the new use cases, enabling new services, and XR and split compute is a great example of it. What we're working with them, and let me go back actually to November 2022. November 2022, we announced, for those of you that are watching on video, we announced this little chip. Let me see if I get it on camera. It's the AR2. And the AR2 was announced in our Snapdragon Summit as a dedicated processor for AR glasses. But our main moat, the main theme around AR2 is that it's not a processor that enables, you know, a standalone all-in-one glass. No, it enables the low latency workloads, the low latency tasks to be done in the glass, but then quickly and low latency connection to, say, your phone, your compute, approximate compute unit, and then, you know, that processing unit having 5G to the cloud. So then if you're a telco, if you're an operator, this is awesome because, hey, it plays along with the smartphone that everyone has today. And it uses 5G so that you can have a richer experiences done with the help of the cloud. So that's one example why I think the telcos are working so closely with us. You saw Orange, Deutsche Telekom, Telefonica, KDDI, Docomo, T-Mobile. Not sure I'm missing anyone, but it really, you know, it was really a slew of the top telcos in the world coming together, saying we are united on this front, enabling XR, and not only XR just as a technology, but also another thing that we highlighted together with the telcos is a more open ecosystem, a way for developers to develop once and be made available on multiple devices. You know, we are strong believers in standards, in interoperability, following OpenXR, and that's where we created our own developer platform called Snapdragon Spaces, pretty much leveraging OpenXR, and the telcos are big believers on that. So they want to have a more open ecosystem, maybe more like the web, maybe more like the physical world, right? It's not like, hey, if I want to buy a shoe in the physical world, it's not only, I can only go to Walmart and Target. I can go to multiple stores. I can go to the shoe manufacturer store. I can go to a shoe store. I can go to Walmart. And I think that, many of the telcos are looking at this world. And for that, an open ecosystem is something that is to their advantage. And that was part of the big discussion this week here in Barcelona.
So Hugo, let me ask you a question through this lens. You and I have known each other for a long time, been in many, interesting meetings and cycles with you and Brian and Patrick and the whole team from Qualcomm. You are focused on knocking down the technical barriers, right? And building the hardware and the underlying hardware, the chipsets that can be the enabler. And that is starting to work. From your personal perspective, what do you think is missing out of the AR equation? Why is it still an edge case with all the technology that we have?
Yeah.
With all the dollars and the resources that companies like Qualcomm and everyone else in the sector is putting into the space? Why is it not further along in its journey? What do you think is missing that people need to focus on? This is what I'm curious about.
Okay, I'm going to give you an example. Some people like it, some people don't. I love it. And the reason is because I grew up, my career started with the mobile, right? When we started to go from internet to mobile internet, right? Mm-hmm. And it's just like deja vu for me. My early days in my careers, it was like, hey, Hugo, how are you going to sell data to phones? Right? What's the use case? What's missing? Hey, you have been talking years about it and, it's still not there. Well, guess what? It was, in my view, 4 key vectors of development. One is the processing, right? Hey, back then you needed a strong GPU, cameras. Back then, having a camera on a phone was a strange thing, right? What? A camera on a phone? But, those are the kind of things that we at Qualcomm invested and created in that journey, right? We went from a solution where we were selling modems to a solution where we were selling a computer, together with the modem. So that's one of the components, right? Is the processing that is needed for this new transformational kind of technologies. The second one is connectivity, right? You need super fast, low latency, high throughput. Okay. The third one is the display, right? The display, in our case here, the optics. Back then, oh, do you want to watch NFL on your phone? Of course, but if the screen is very small, who's going to want it, right? And the fourth one is really related to the ecosystem, the content, the application. So to me, these are the main 4 vectors that we saw in the transformation from the internet to the mobile internet. And now from the mobile internet to the spatial internet, to me, these are the 4. So now back to your question, what's missing, for us to get in AR?
Yeah.
I believe that with on the processor vector, this is it.
Right.
This is a very good start. I'm not saying this is the end. There are going to be, generations of products, but it's a very good starting point. I think we are unblocked for the processor component on the glass. Connectivity, well, in this first phase, we're not saying connectivity directly to the cloud. I'm not saying 5G in the glass. That's something, of course, we're working on, but still we see connectivity, to a proximate compute unit like a phone, and Wi-Fi 7 is pretty darn good for it.
Yeah.
So then, okay, if I have the processor, I have the connectivity, let's say check marked, right? So then we go to the displays and optics. And maybe Ronnie is probably one of the better ones here to chime in here. But, I do see a lot of progress in this front. I do expect over the next couple of years, a lot of improvement in, so then in 2023, something else that we announced here in Barcelona, or actually a partner of ours, Gore-Tex. They're a very good partner on the ODM front, kind of building reference designs. They build a very nice reference design with AR2. Granted, it's still using freeform kind of optics, right? So it's not a waveguide yet. But when you see the pictures of it, and hopefully I'll give you guys to try, it's pretty good. It's not a glass that I'm going to be walking on the street yet, using the whole day. But for many applications, it's going to work just fine. And the good thing is that these type of optics, they are more cost friendly. So and then what I expect is these glasses, they will be used episodically. So if I'm going to play a game, if I'm going to do my work, if I'm going to have a multi-monitor experience, I put these glasses on. But it's not yet, the substitute to the phone, which will take still a few years to come. So I do expect over end of this year, 2024, we're gonna start to see very interesting glasses following AR2, and then I do expect a ramp in the probably years following it. I would love to hear your perspective, Roni, too.
You go. I share your optimism in it, and I think your experience of the internet going to mobile and the actually quite intense number of years it took for it to really happen. People forget that.
Yes.
Is really important. Like there's that people forget history. I just want to throw out a couple more factors beyond your four, just get your reaction. I think unlike the phone, I think the weight on your face is fundamentally important. And that means like pushing engineering and tech much harder, much more intense than anything we ever had to do on mobile phone. I think the second one is like all the thermal issues when you try to pack something in so powerful, so small. And then two more, fashion is one, because like the phone could be fashionable, but something on your face that you're really going to use, like you guys are obviously wanting wide consumer adoption, has just got to be cool, period, and lightweight, and I could wear it for many hours at a time. But I think the one that I obsessed about, I don't think the industry obsessed enough in your position to maybe push this, the physiologic factors of this, phone never had to deal with. Just my take is when something is that close to your eye and brain, it is actually a form of brain-computer interface. Yeah. And if the industry realizes that's happening, we will do away with things that make you sick, that don't just, they don't respond to what the body needs. And I see like so many companies spending billions of dollars ignoring the body. And this is a brain-computer interface in my view. I just wanted to get your take on those, because I agree with everything you said. But I think the circuit, I think if this is like a win circuit, everything has to go green, must also include those other factors for this market to take off and for you to sell billions of chips, Yeah. I think, the first part of your comment, this is something that we're addressing head on, right? The power and thermals. With AR2, we achieved less than 1 watt of processing power for the key components. And a few things that we have done is actually it's distributed processing, not only between the glass and a phone, but even within the glass. We actually have 3 chips, and not only, it's both because physical space, so that we can better distribute the circuitry within the glass, but also about heat dissipation, right? If you concentrate all the power generated in one spot, well, it's harder to dissipate the power. So by enabling it, connectivity on one side, some processing on the other side, a little bit in the front. And the other thing that it helps by putting a little bit in the front is that you can connect many sensors. It's kind of an aggregator of sensors that you can then send it to the main processing unit in the glass. But I think the key is going back to distributed processing between the glass and a phone, or the glass and a PC, where really the heavy rendering you don't do on the glass, right? You do it on a companion unit, and that's where the heavy workloads happen. And it's a big system problem, right? Because it's the power, it's the performance. These 3
I mean, what do you do on the head versus on the phone? And do we do that dynamically? Do we do it that fixed? It's a big, and this is what Qualcomm is great at. And this is why, you know, we think this is something that Qualcomm really needs to go, you know, head on. And you know, I think that's kind of talks to our pedigree of low power, high performance. You know, when we look into all our key IPs, that's what we strive for. Now, on the physiological, on the person, you know, we do what we can at Qualcomm to solve that problem. You know, when it comes to latency, when it comes to, you know, ergonomics, and really, this is what we are trying to do as we work with developers, right? People that are creating experiences. I mean, even in, you know, the example of VR, you know, the early experiences of VR were horrible, not only because, you know, latencies and technology was not ready, but because the content was not made, you know, with what you're saying to account. So, or, you know, remember those roller coaster demos? I mean, that's the, you know, most sickening experience one can have, technology aside. You know, your body is not moving, but you put yourself, you know, you're tricking your brain, you know, visually that you are moving, and you have that disconnect and people just feel sick. So I think that part of it is the technology, and that's the part that we at Qualcomm can help. Part of it is adapting the experience to where we are, you know, in technology. And that's what, you know, I think that working closer with the developers and working closely with our big tech partners, that's how, you know, we look at trying to tackle the second one, Ronnie.
It's interesting. We discussed previously, or certainly I saw at CES, this proliferation of assisted reality. It's like spatial computing, having a spatial understanding and understanding of your context may be a bridge too far for a while. I think, Roni, you said last week, it's kind of, we need to take a breather and recollect where we are in the technology that we're using. And instead, in the near term, look at these applications like Nreal Air, where they're just screen extenders, right? So, you know, you're using them to have a better experience consuming the media. You mentioned earlier, you know, people watching sports on their phone. Well, now here's a $300 accessory to your phone that allows you to watch that game on a simulated 200-inch screen. So for people who are looking at their hands playing games, this could really change things.
In one hand, I really agree. You know, hey, let me give you another example going back to mobile, right? Or the mobile transformation. Hey, what was the use case, one of the killer use cases that, you know, started to drive mobile internet? Email, right? Remember BlackBerry, right? So it was not a new use case, totally, you know, not thought of, that started mobile internet. You know, one of the killer use cases was email, right? And I think what you're talking about is similar. That, hey, it doesn't have to be kind of you know, holographic telepresence, or, you know, the ultimate application that we all envision. It can just be, hey, it's the application that I use today, but experienced in a way more comfortable, more immersive way. So in that regard, I 100% agree. But, you know, my concern in trying, you know, some of these is that just having the content locked to your head, it's the kind of the problem that Roni was saying. I don't feel comfortable. You know, as I move my head, the screen moves with me. It's just not great. It's not about, you know, the resolution is okay. I can do actually email. I can actually watch a video with that type of display, but not having it anchored in the environment, it's like to me is you know, just
and those problems are solved with a software layer. Like, you know, that's right. Actually completely solved and solvable.
That's right.
The biggest issue that I see is not necessarily the anchoring, because the anchoring is a solvable problem. It's the challenge of field of view on devices that have to kind of look like glasses, or somehow somebody thinks they have to look like glasses. Is that you're constantly sort of, at least the developers you're working with that you provide the chipsets to, are constantly trying to ride this line between defining the proper field of view and the proper ergonomics. And it's almost an impossible line to thread, because everybody wants the holy grail of a massive field of view, but nobody wants to sort of commit to the problem of the fact that, you know, that requires a larger device. And it's an interesting conundrum.
You know, that's why it's so nice to be working on this space right now, because you know, there's no perfect solution yet, but there are many paths that we're working towards that. I mean, even the VR with pass-through, what we are calling kind of mixed reality, right? Yeah, you know, it's a little bit bigger, but you know, it solves that you know, field of view problem, right? As you start to get better mixed reality, better video pass-through, you know, the experiences will start to come. So I think it is a very valid, a very important path of evolution. Then you have, I mean, I actually, you know, I am a fan of those bigger bird bath solutions, where I don't know if you, I mean, let me,
Yeah, me too. We have a bunch of them, and the clarity works well. The weight distribution works well. I think, by the way, so if this is not public, we can cut this part out, because I think it is public, but you can tell us if it's not. The big agent of change that I think is so critical to what you're working on is the fact that today, all of these, what Charlie refers to as these extended screen concept things that are fairly lightweight and comfortable and relatively inexpensive to buy, are all tethered by a USB-C cable. But in the very near future, that all goes wireless. And that's public information from Qualcomm, right? I'm not saying anything that's secret.
Well, the device manufacturers are saying that.
Yeah, this 100%. That's kind of what the whole concept of the AR2 was. It's wireless, right? Using Wi-Fi 7. So it's here. I think it's not a technology barrier anymore to have. So going back, so I think that there is the kind of VR, MR kind of track is going to get better and smaller and so forth.
Yeah.
There is on the lower end, kind of this very simple glasses that, first they are locked to your head. Now, hey, add a software layer, like you were saying, that anchored, and the field of view is not perfect, but you know, some people will prefer that. And then you have this kind of all-in-ones AR. So almost like these 3-4 categories, they're going to evolve and, you know, I think converge. But you know, I think as Qualcomm, what we do is enable the industry. You know, we're working with all these type of devices, and I think what's good is that all of them will help each other as experiences are built for one, you know, that can migrate to others, as long as we know we have a common kind of developer platform.
Well, and as you refer to the enabling the industry, it would be interesting to see, I don't know if you can name them all off the top of your head, but you guys literally support and create the entire industry with some notable exceptions. So like, it'd be interesting to see if you can tick off the names of all the devices in the XR category that you support, because the only two that I know that you are not actively supporting are Magic Leap and potentially whatever's going on with Apple. Everybody else, I think, is Qualcomm. Am I right about that?
That's correct. And I think that, you know, Qualcomm, and again, one of the learnings from the mobile and some of the other industries that we have is we created a model to scale, right? That we work in a certain way with the big companies. You know, back in September, we announced, you know, Cristiano and Mark Zuckerberg, Cristiano, our CEO, and Mark Zuckerberg announced a multi-generation partnership. So working super tightly with the big guys. But we also build things like reference designs and in a software stack that is easy for a startup to create products. So I think that's kind of our model. And, you know, last I count, I think we're above 65 devices that we launched, you know, between VR and AR, consumer, enterprise. And on that, of course, you count the multiple generations that Pico did, the multiple generations that Meta did, Lenovo, but then guys like Vuzix and RealWear,
Right.
and Rio and so forth. So I think that's kind of the model of creating a horizontal platform that multiple people can innovate, can create. And then also working super closely with the big tech companies.
Yeah, well, then the chips become cost effective, right? You're able to sell them at a price point that they can deploy these things and make a viable device that's in the just few $100s, which we're already seeing start to enter into the market commercially. So it's a good time.
And by the way, Ted, you asked about the wireless connection, between glasses and phones. A couple more news that came here at MWC. Xiaomi showed this wireless glass prototype, and then OnePlus showed their phone that is ready to be paired with glasses from multiple companies. So this is okay, me doing a little bit of marketing about our products, but when we created a program called the Spaces Ready, and think about it as a compatibility program between phones and glasses, right? So you can have a phone that is Spaces Ready. Well, that means that any glass that is Spaces Ready, I can wirelessly connect to it. So then you're going to be able to mix and match devices from different manufacturers, glasses from different manufacturers with phones from different manufacturers through this Spaces Ready program. So again, just tying back into why the telcos are so excited about working with Qualcomm, with Spaces, and leveraging the mobile players to drive some of it.
Yeah.
I have a ton more things I want to talk to you about, Hugo. We're out of time. It's going to get boring for our listeners to keep us going on and on. But amazing that you've taken time out at a really, really busy time to share some news with us and to talk about XR, our favorite topic. So with that, this is our show, everybody. Thanks for joining us, and we'll talk to you next Friday.
Thanks for joining us from Barcelona, Hugo. We appreciate it.
All right. Nice talking to you. Thanks, guys. Bye.